What's shaking, everybody? Luke Dancy here, and I am joined by one of the greatest living magicians of our time, the one and only Mr. Michael Ammar. Mr. Ammar, how are you, sir?
I'm fine, Luke. What a nice thing to say. Luke Dancy.
It's true.
Long time no see. Saw you in Blackpool a few months ago, but it was just a brief hello.
It was quick because he was too busy lecturing for 1,000+ people in the arena, and he's just Michael Ammar. But we definitely got to see each other and say hello. And
Tell you what, man, you walk out to a Blackpool lecture, and it's like as far as you can see people, and it's like, man, it's that classic thing. I wish I had a better act,
Oh, whatever. You are absolutely one of the nicest guys in Magic, but you're also one of the most skilled performers, one of the most well-known lecturers throughout the world. This is what kicked it all off for me, Michael Ammar. I've got this queued up here. This is you looking onto the massive Easy to Master Card Miracles series.
Look at that. Nice collection.
It's a little tower of goodness there. All those beautiful, beautiful things that are now actually available on download. I want people to know that. We're not here to talk just about product, but one of the beautiful things with technology is people can now download those and start learning this stuff from home, which is really cool.
Yep. I've got a download site, worldsgreatestmagic.com.
Nice.
Worldsgreatestmagic.com, and we broke those down into individual tricks. So you can watch the trick and then decide if you want to buy it, and it's just really affordable, and it's the way to go.
Yes, sir. We've got some people already giving some love, and you guys too. Well, we do these live, obviously, is so that you guys can ask questions and you can connect with people just like this. And Ben has a nice comment over on YouTube. He says the most influential mind in close-up magic from his generation, and I agree with that 1,000%.
Oh,
as well.
Sounds like those bribes are paying off.
Patrick over on Facebook says that the Easy to Master Card Miracles are still the go-to for many card tricks that he does, and it's true. There's so much gold on those. So much gold, man.
Really, I mean, it wasn't just me. We had a little team of guys that, were brainstorming on what would be the best collection of stuff. And, I thought 7, 8, and 9, it was as good as 1, 2, and 3. And that's how we wanted to do it. We didn't want to make it seem like we were running out of good material. So some of that stuff we had held on to, to make sure that we finished strong. And I'm just really proud of the work I did with L&L. Lewis really knew how to produce a video, I tell you. He had a great setup there. The crew, artist, everybody stayed right there at his home, and we didn't leave the place until everything was done. And he had food catered, and it was just the perfect way to do it.
Nice. I mean, we miss those. At least I miss those, and the crowds, the L&L crowds. You must have become friends with them over the years.
I did, and I saw, plus I hosted, maybe 50 other titles. I would come up and just kind of interview the guys, the other artists, stuff like that. So I got to know that audience really well. People used to think, well, how did you get such a good audience? And it was tough, to get people to come up there. At the beginning, he advertised in the newspaper. Do you want to see a great magic show? Free. In fact, you'll get we'll pay you $50 because we're going to videotape it. And he kept track of the people that were good audiences. And if they were a good audience, he said, come back next week. And we have another artist. And before you know it, he had a really strong list of performers. That was our first. Mike Maxwell had hired those three or four girls to be there, and we just thought there's just too many women, and that guy was walking by the place, and he said, "Hey, you want to see some magic? Come on in." And so we just lassoed this guy at the very last minute to come in and balance the audience out. I mean, Murphy's. You're working with Murphy's here. I mean, that's one name that Mark Murphy and I had in common was Mike Maxwell. Mm-hmm. We both knew Mike in the early days, and he passed away just in the last year.
Yeah. Very sad. Very sad. But
Yeah.
that's the beautiful thing about having things like this to watch. And I know you said you haven't even watched some of this footage in quite a long time. This brings back so many memories for me growing up. I mean, you were like the figure. You were the guy that you would go to the magic shop, and there was the Michael Ammar set, whether it's the Top It stuff, the coin, the money magic, the business card, like all of it, the Ammar world of stuff. This is like such a
Well,
nice
that
reminder. It's cool.
we had no idea that videos could sell. That when we started putting these out, we'd more or less given up on video as a good learning medium because they were expensive and they were basically just filming people's lectures, and so it wasn't dynamic. It didn't have live audiences and things like that. But we really hit the right formula with this, and this, so 1990, 91, that sort of thing. Up until then, the Tarbell course was still the best-selling books in magic after year, because as soon as the magic shop owners saw that somebody was serious, they say, well, now if you're really serious, you got to get this set of books. Mm-hmm. And that was their big recommendation. And for the first time, those videotapes became the recommended thing. It was that thing that they could recommend. Oh, if you're really interested, you got to get this set of videotapes. And that's the reason it worked out so good.
We're getting a lot of love for you out here. Ray Coleman is saying that you are the good to the magician. You're basically the magician's magician. Obviously, you perform a lot for the lay public as well and on TV. But a lot of love from you, especially from the magicians out there. Yeah,
I love that. And I love that, on YouTube, they collect these comments, and I can go back and check them later on. So I may not be able to see them now while we're talking, but later on I'll be able to go back and see all of these. And so please feel free to leave me some messages, because I will see them, even if I can't see them right now.
Absolutely. And speaking of you as a performer, a little blast from the past here. This is a little more recent. This is you on the David Letterman show. Not too recent, but more recent than the other picture I have.
Exactly. Man. Boy, wow. Talk about a jaded eye. Letterman.
I have heard that for so long. He's a really tough spectator, huh? And it's true, right? It's got to be true.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I've done the Tonight Show and a bunch of Merv Griffin shows and some other Will Shriner and stuff like that. And what they always say is, we want you to have a good show. If you have a good show, we'll have a good show. And that's the way they looked at it. But with Letterman, it really was just a matter of, we just want this to be interesting. Mm-hmm. And if we can make you look like an idiot, that's really interesting. So, it was just a different attitude with Letterman. I came through all right, I think.
Yeah, I would definitely say so. And this person I'm about to show, I believe, was a little bit more, I wouldn't say forgiving, but a little bit more of a fan of magic. I'm talking about this guy, Johnny Carson.
Well, there it is. Boy, yeah. And Johnny was the nicest one of all of them. Nice. He's the only one that you got to see before you went out. He actually, after I rehearsed, I was in the dressing room, and I heard a knock on the door, and I said, "Come in." And he cracked the door open and goes, "So, are you busy?" "No, come on in." And he said, "Hey, they told me that you did some really interesting things at rehearsal. I'm a magician." "Yeah, I know that." And he says, "You got a deck of cards on you?" "Yeah." And I gave him a deck of cards, and the guy sat there and did card tricks for me for about 15 minutes.
Wow, that's cool. Wow, that's really cool.
Oh, he passed away. His nephew inherited his props, and he made a point of sending a really nice props, one of his really nice props, to several of the magicians that had appeared on the show, with some of his stationery, his business card, and just a thank you card letter about how Johnny always loved to have the magicians on, and here's a little chance to have a piece of Johnny's magic. And And I mean, how nice is that?
That's amazing. That is
It,
absolutely
it
amazing.
is. It
Yeah,
really is.
it's really, really cool. Speaking of amazing, a lot of people are saying that you are like one of their favorite magicians. You're a true master of the art. Obviously, we all know that. We even have people watching from overseas. They're staying up late for this. It's almost 2 a.m. Vimal, our friend Vimal, is in London. He's hanging out. Just want to give some love out there to our
Oh, how
friends
nice.
across the pond there. Very
Yeah,
cool.
we may have seen him at Blackpool
Very
a few
true.
months ago.
Very true. We've had some questions coming in as well. One of them was dun, da, 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 here it comes. Jack Stone. This is a great question. I want to know this one too. Jack wants to know, how did it feel working with the professor? Obviously, you had a very close relationship with him. If you could share a little bit about that relationship, that'd be really cool to hear.
You know, I first met the professor at the Las Vegas Magic Seminars, the Desert Magic Seminars back in the late 70s. And they would feature the professor and Tony Slidini. And I was just amazed that they could get these people to appear at a convention that maybe only a few hundred people would be at.
Yeah.
And as soon as I got there, man, I made a beeline just to hang around this guy and just try to be close to him and introduce myself and wait for the right time to ask if he'd like to see a magic trick. And, he was just so gracious. I think happy to see a young guy that was enthusiastic and passionate about magic. And whenever he'd make a comment about something, I always made a point of the next time I saw him showing him that I took his advice seriously. And by the second or third time I saw him, he started to recognize me and kind of enjoyed having me hang out with him, because everybody would want him to do a trick. And they'd come over and ask him to sign some stuff, and eventually they'd say, well, can you perform a little something? Well, here, he'll show you a little something. And then, I would do some stuff. So I think he liked it. I took some of the pressure off of him in those situations. But yeah, it was like a dream. Growing up in West Virginia, I just had books and things like that to count on, and to read these books and then be able to meet these people live was like a dream. It was like a dream come true. And so when people come up to me and say, hey, I've studied your stuff and it's a pleasure to meet you, I understand exactly how that feels, because that was exactly how I was. And when these guys would be gracious to me and were polite and willing to share with me, I mean, I feel like I'm just kind of, giving back what I got from so many of the greats of magic.
And he was definitely a huge figure that he didn't really surround himself with a whole lot of people. And that's what's really cool about you, is that you were kind of one of those in the circle, that people only hear about, which is pretty cool.
And I always made a point of finding him and just kind of sticking like glue. It just didn't go away, and he was always very gracious, though, and just and really, you like to see somebody that would take things like classics, like the cups and balls or the linking rings, and not do it exactly the way that he did it. And he kind of appreciated, well, there you go. So, I mean, that cups and balls routine was developed, primarily to show him that I wasn't using any of the sequences that he had developed, that all of that stuff was completely different than anything that he got. And I think that he appreciated that.
Nice. And for those that don't know, I'm going to give a little love here. This that we're looking at is from the World's Greatest Magic TV series that aired many moons ago. I looked forward to them every single year. They came out around Thanksgiving every year, if I'm not mistaken. But there's an even deeper story. This is around the time when you were doing Caesar's Magical Empire, which I unfortunately never got to see with my own eyes. I heard it was amazing.
Oh, such a nice place. Such a beautiful place for magic. And, I was right on top of my game there. Both of the effects that I did on this World's Greatest Magic was the cups and balls and the Rollover Aces. They said, let's film it once, just to see if the cameras are all in the right place and everything, and then we'll give it a real go afterwards. And Gary Willett told me these were the only two effects in the history of performing those series that they used on the first take. That was the first take. The Rollover Aces was on the first take.
Wow.
And again, I was performing 5 or 6 shows a night, 6 nights a week, right there at the Magical Empire, and that's where they filmed this. So yeah, I was on top of my game.
You first take for both tricks.
Yeah, first take on both of them. Yeah.
Damn, that's crazy. Wow. And the Magical Empire, this is where it's shot, right? You're in part of the Magical Empire right now, right? When they were filming this is part of it, yeah?
Yes, and now that table is kind of a triangle, and they wanted me to film at the Y part of the triangle, and I said, no, let's turn it around so that more people are in the frame, and more people are closer. See, otherwise, all those close people would have been further away. And again, that was the first time that they'd filmed anything like that, with the table turned backwards.
Mr. Ammar, I have to ask you a question. I'm going to back this up for just a second. Who was that in the back over your left corner there? I think I recognize that pretty face there.
Cameo appearance by Hannah, the lovely Hannah.
Yep.
She looks exactly the same right now. It's the magic. Her family's, Frances Willard is her mother, and her sister and her brother are very attractive as well. I remember thinking our kids are going to have at least a 50-50 chance to be good looking, with her team there.
What's really cool, something we don't have to necessarily show, but it's pretty interesting that behind you is a piece of, it goes back a long way, the history.
Right. This is the spirit cabinet.
It's really cool.
That we were going to do the spirit cabinet this year at the Magic Castle. We had flown out to L.A. We were going to be in It's Magic and then start performing in the Palace. The first time I'd ever be in the Palace at the Magic Castle. And we were going to feature the spirit cabinet. And it was March 16th. Was going to be our first day, that Monday, and that's the day that they closed due to the virus, and It's Magic canceled because of the virus. And it was such a shame because, Hannah was ready to go, man. She had done her homework and she looked beautiful, and we can't wait for the castle to open up again to have a chance to go back. I'm just wondering how all that's going to turn out, with the virus and
none of us
know.
Yeah.
Stuff, and the Magic Castle. None of those rooms are huge, but everybody goes up and down the same staircase and up and down the same hallways, and the close-up room is really close up, which is part of what made the castle special. It was probably the first place in the world that gave close-up performers a legitimate showroom, their own dressing room, their own host to introduce them, and a parlor so that you can do the stand-up magic and the stage and a place to perform behind the bar. It was like the only place that catered to all the venues, the performance arenas for magic. Oh. And I just have my fingers crossed that they're going to come up with a vaccine or something, Yep. Actually, I went back and I was reading about the Spanish flu from 1918. They didn't come up with a vaccine for the Spanish flu. It went on for about 3 years, and then it did just disappear because basically everybody had caught it. You either died from it or you developed immunity to it, and then it disappeared. And I thought Trump was out of his mind when he said it'll disappear, it'll go away. But it might do something like that once enough people have antibodies in their system, then it won't have a chance to spread the way that it needs to. to survive. So, and they did all the things 100 years ago that we're doing now. They wore masks. They did the social distancing. They closed the schools. They closed the businesses, and they basically starved it.
Well, hopefully sooner than later, everything we're dealing with will be just a memory, and we can all learn something from it. Hopefully.
Yeah.
But something fun I want to bring up real quick to you, Mr. Michael Ammar. I hope you're ready.
Oh, my man.
A little blast from the past here. Got some Ammar facts that. That's exactly what I wanted. The little bit of laughter there. So now, unfortunately, the website doesn't seem to exist anymore. But
what a fun thing!
I managed to find some. If you guys don't know, there was a thing about 8 years ago, maybe a little longer, where people were making the comparison that Michael Ammar is kind of like the Chuck Norris of magic, and so. These are a few lines that I thought I would share and ask Michael maybe what some of his favorites were over that time. The first one was, Michael Ammar can do a Charlier cut with just one card. Yes. So that's pretty cool. The next one here, Michael Ammar can do a spring with 52 decks of cards. All right. Michael Ammar can do card on ceiling without the ceiling.
Outdoors. You know, I went to Sorcerer Safari one year. This may have been 10 years ago. And we actually did the card on ceiling outside. And exactly as it would be described. I had a big helium balloon, huge helium with a really long string. And it was a black balloon, and it was dusk. So you couldn't see and a ball of wax that was stuck outside. And so we were indoors, and I had the audience, everybody come outside. And under cover of that, I stuck that wax to the card, and then I sprung the cards into the air, and then that card kind of hovered there for a second and then just floated up until it went out of sight. And it was a nice moment.
So you made that a reality, which is great.
Just, inspired by the Ammar facts there.
Michael Ammar can do symbol with 52 coins. Michael Ammar can back palm his own hand. God. Let me see if there are any other favorites here. Those are just a few of the highlights, but did you ever find out, in all seriousness, who was behind AmmarFacts.com? Do you ever find that out?
Yeah, boy, the names escape me at the moment. I think Jason Dean was one of the guys. Okay. The D&D guys, the Double D guys, and I'm spacing out on the other guy's name, but it was a labor of love. I mean, those are really great guys.
Yeah, that was when that was going on. It was like everywhere. It was a lot of fun. So, speaking of fun times, I could remember
it's been so long, I can't remember some. It's really funny.
Yeah, and I'm glad that when I brought it up, it brought some joy to you there, because it's definitely a lot of fun to us too. So, yeah. Speaking of fun times, Michael Mayo's got a great question I'd love to hear some insight into. I would love to hear about your brainstorm in the Bahamas and your time with the other magic hedonists. So, brainstorm in the Bahamas. Wow.
Yeah. Boy, that was, it was such a good idea. The basis of that comes straight out of Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich, where it talked about developing a mastermind group, that if you get together with a group of like-minded individuals and put yourself in a good environment for creativity, that there's a synergy that is created. And every time I hung out with Paul Harris and Daryl, and Richard Kaufman at one time was part of the team, and Adam Fleischer, we would always come up with ideas. And the idea was, what if we went onto some island someplace and spent a week just brainstorming, and could we come up with enough stuff to publish a book? And if it's good enough, maybe the book would finance the chance to go to some other exotic place to do the same thing. And there's a lot of good stuff in that book, and everything in that book was created that week.
That's cool. That's
Yeah,
really
and he published a book. I'm spacing out on his name. He's a very creative guy with a beard. But he put out a book that was called Brainstorm in My Pajamas. And you know how they had the girl laying on the getting a suntan? It was a picture of him in his bed with his pajamas. And Brainstorm in My Pajamas.
There's a picture floating around of you guys hanging out with a girl across you. I remember this, you and Daryl and Paul Harris.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Very cool.
And I won't tell you the story, but
good times, good times.
Yeah.
Of course, this is a family show, which leads me to a question about the younger people. I've had this a couple times. William Cummings over on Facebook says, Mr. Ammar, if you had to give one tip to young magicians just getting started in performing in front of live audiences, what would it be? And I know Frankie Valli also asked that about younger, advice for younger people. So,
yeah. Well, the best way to get better quicker is, first of all, you want to think about what you're going to perform when you go out and kind of imagine how it should go. Kind of think how you're going to go into it and how you're going to come out of it. Just don't learn the body of the thing, but how you're going to bring it up in conversation and how you're going to end it. And then after you perform, think about it. What went right? What went wrong? What could have been better? What surprised you? What surprised them? I used to have a sheet that I would fill out every show. Here's all the tricks I'm going to do in this show. Here's the audience it's going to be for. And here's what I think is going to go the best. And here's what I think, I'm going to get out of this show. And then after the show, I would say, now what worked? What didn't work? What could be better? What should I leave out? Do I need a better opening? Do I need a better closing? And I think that if you just take your experiences and try and squeeze as much out of them as you can. I've seen guys that have been in magic 30 years and they're still not that good because they have 1 year of experience 30 times and they don't really squeeze it to find out what's working and what's not working. But I think that you can get 30 years of experience in 3 years if you really think about it and try to get to learn from every experience. I think you learn more from one real performance than you do from 2 weeks of practice or a month of just thinking about it. So every performance gives you a chance to really learn more than any rehearsal will give you.
And this is a great example here. We're watching you. This is one of my favorite tricks. I used to do this all the time when I did walk around work. This is a 1 coin flurry sequence with a nice jumbo coin kicker at the ending. And just like you're saying, the only way to get better about this stuff is to get out and do it. And here you are, literally surrounded by people with just a coin.
That's all David Roth's inspiration. David Roth was just so far ahead of everyone with the coin magic back in the 70s and the 80s. Just a real inspiration to so many people and still a dear friend.
Speaking of inspirations, I want to give you some love here, Michael. Our friend Eric Treese out there says, I never considered performing until I went to my very first magic lecture, which was Michael Ammar. So you've inspired people to just start performing.
I love the magic lectures. It's the best of both worlds. You get to perform, and then you get to talk about the thinking that went into it. I think a good magic lecture should be as good as any performance can be. It should be better because, again, you get to do both. You get to talk about how amazing some of these secrets are. Now, you have to think about how to make the explanations interesting and entertaining, but there's no reason for a magic lecture to be boring. It should be a sit on the edge of your seat all the way through it. And, I remember the first time I did a magic lecture, and then all these guys wanted to buy lecture notes. And I'm sitting here thinking, how long has this been going on? Well, this is great. I loved this. And I can't wait till it comes back, because, I got one more tour, global tour in my system before but even that would take 5 or 6 years. So it's not like I'm looking to retire anytime soon. If you really go around and do the U.S. and each of the countries, it would take 4 or 5 years. But I'd like to do it one more time before that whole thing just kind of disappears. Magic clubs aren't what they used to be.
Sure. Well, I don't think I enjoy hearing the word retire out of your mouth, so I hope that doesn't happen for a very, very long time.
But touring,
okay.
The idea of really going out and doing 25 cities in 28 days, that kind of thing, it's kind of a young man's game, man, because it's a marathon. And again, to say, I'll devote 4 or 5 more years to it, I'd love to say I'm going to be doing it when I'm the professor's age, doing lectures.
That's what we want. That's what we want.
But I'm concerned everything's going to change. Yeah. That's my concern. All these kids are learning stuff on YouTube and online, and I just don't know if the infrastructure for doing a tour and going around in every city is going to survive. I'd love to think so, because there's nothing like, back in the day though, if you wanted to see a guy do something, some routine or something, you had to be in the room when he did it, or you didn't get to see it. So that's and the chance for a top magician to come into your city and do this sort of thing was amazing.
Absolutely. And I think your camera is frozen there. You might want to turn it off and turn it back on real quick on your computer there.
Okay, so let's see.
I'll just come back to my shot real quick. And yeah, if you want to just restart that. Yeah, there you are.
There you go.
Just like magic. Back to normal.
Voila. It's like I was telling you, we're having a thunderstorm here in Florida, and that can affect this reception. So let's see what happens.
Yep. Well, we've got a few more minutes with you here, and I won't keep you past that. Like I promised you, like 30, 45 minutes here. So we're over the 30-minute mark. So
my friend, I could do this all day with you. You know that.
Well, it's definitely appreciated. And, everything that you're saying about things changing and magic clubs, I will say one thing, there is no substitute for what you bring to the table. Any of the masters that we have, the wealth of knowledge and the wisdom that they can share with people is priceless. And I feel like the need for that will always exist. Maybe
I hope so.
Yeah, that's just my guess. I don't know everything, of course. But of course I was just joking about the whole retirement thing, but I will say out loud, magic needs you. Magic loves you. Magicians love you, and it's true.
During these amazing days, a lot of guys are doing Zoom magic shows. I haven't done that. Mm-hmm. I worry about it. And here's my metaphor for that. I love sushi. Love going to a good sushi bar. But then we discovered you could buy sushi at the grocery store. Oh, great. So we started getting sushi at the grocery store, which is not as good as getting it at a good sushi bar. But after 2 or 3 months of eating grocery store sushi, I thought, well, I guess sushi's not as good as I thought it was. And I quit eating sushi for a couple of years. And I see in a good sushi bar, and I go in, and I go, it is great. It's just not great from the grocery store. Now, my concern is if they see a lot of Zoom magic shows, that certain clients will start to think that's what magic is like. And magic's not as good as I thought it was. When really magic needs to be experienced live. There's nothing like a live magic experience. And when you go from 3D to 2D, part of the soul, I think, pops out of it. But teaching is still good because the information is just as good. I developed this curriculum for magic. It's Discover Magic, and it's being run now by Brian South and Michael Rosander. He goes by Michael Mario now, and they do such a wonderful job. It's discovermagic.com, and what it is, it's a franchise for teaching magic to kids 8 to 12, and there's all these life skills built into it. And the guys that are in that Discover Magic business model didn't miss a beat. They're doing just as many more now that they converted it to online things, because parents are needing something for their kids to do when they're quarantined at home. And it's such a good curriculum and such a good business model. Some of these guys, by far, I mean, it's like their whole business is kind of revolving around the school shows that promote the magic classes and then the magic classes. You know, it's teaching magic can be just as effective online, but I think the performance of it is a real challenge. Yeah. It's a real challenge.
Agreed. There's been a few people that have come close. One name that jumps out, Colin Cloud, is doing a really amazing job. But keep in mind, though, I think the reason it works well for him is because he's a mentalist as well. So he does a different style of magic than a lot of us do. You know, the typical.
I'm not saying that's impossible. I do think that if they really put some time into it, you know, there's Anton James up in Boston is doing a great job, and Kostya Kemlet here in Orlando really does a great job with it. I just think I would be careful. You know, I've done a few things for some clients, but I've kept it short, and I did it for free, and saying, look, I just wanted to, you know, do a little something to say hello to everybody, and as soon as this is over, I'd like to come and see you live and do the real thing for you. I'm just concerned that, it's hard to say what's going to happen with all this live stuff.
Well, something that people can work on right now when they're at home is a question coming in from Ben, which is about writing and scripting. He says that, Mr. Ammar, your scripting is always practical, functional, and on point. What are your thoughts on writing? So what about scripting? Something people can do right now that you can't perform their shows like they used to, but they can really hone in the presentations right now, which is very important.
I think about it a lot. Now, from my experience, though, I always overscript. Okay. When I sit down and I write a script, I always end up with about twice as many words as I end up really saying, as I feel comfortable saying when I'm standing there. And so anymore, I try to get a loose outline, a few good lines, and then I want to find some place to try it out live in front of an audience to see how much more I want to bring to it. But one thing that the professor always used to say, how do you go into it? And how do you come out of it? You know, so you have to think of some hook line as you're going into it to bring it up. And from that point, you know, everybody needs some place to be bad, some place to perform things a few times to really see how much more patter they need than they come out with in their outline. But I love sitting down and writing it. But from my experience, I always write too much. I always think I'm going to feel comfortable saying more than I end up saying. You know, I end up just talking instead of talking as I'm doing things and moving the ball forward. And you know, that's just my experience. But it's always good to have more than you need. But sure. Again, you really need to find some place to try it out to see how much do you really need to write. Yep. You know, you fall in love with your own voice, and
yeah.
You know, you end up there saying too much, and I'm sensitive to that. You know.
Well, that's something that you only realize and get better at by performing and doing and figuring it out as you go, right? So.
Right, and again, thinking about it afterwards. Now, how did that work? What was I? At what points was I just there talking, and nothing's happening? kind of thing. So I really kind of try to script for a short attention span, and is really good advice, because people's attention span is getting shorter and shorter and shorter. Now with TikTok and things like that, the attention span is like this.
Very true. It's very, very true. Yeah. Things are definitely changing. If we could touch on the Zoom stuff real quick, do you mind if we take another question on the Zoom world, all that stuff?
Absolutely.
Cool. Sean brought up a good question here. He says, on your idea with Zoom, does the idea of technology and magic work together, or does it take away from the performance? And that could even be without the whole Zoom virtual shows, even
tricks and things like that. You really have to be careful.
Yeah.
And that's the danger. To be truly astonished, you have to believe that a certain thing is so. And, it's not suspending disbelief. It's finding things that you can really believe. The hand is really empty and now something's in it, or the cup is really empty and now there's something in it. And when you start doing it through technology, it's just, I think, easy for people to think there's stuff going on that I'm not seeing. I had a chance to speak with Franz Harari a few weeks ago, and he was telling me, boy, when I put together these illusions for television, all of the thought and all of the effort goes into convincing people it would look like this if you were standing here. Because it's too easy for, when the Taj Mahal disappears, they're going to think it's a camera trick. For that to matter at all, somebody has to believe those people standing there are seeing what I'm seeing through the screen. And that's one of the real challenges.
Yeah, it certainly is. And here's a good question as we start to wrap up. Frankie Valley would like to know, excuse me, what keeps you going in magic? What keeps you motivated? What keeps you inspired these days after you've done for so long?
Well, I still love the experience of performing. I love a good audience, and I love meeting young guys that are passionate about magic, because I've seen some of these young guys grow up to become really great magicians. And so when I see these young guys, if they're truly serious and they're asking the right questions, man, I want to give them all the advice I can, because they stay in magic. Part of them stays in magic. They may get some other job, but they'll always love magic and come back to it later in their life when they can. And I just love seeing that process. I knew Eric Mead when he was 13 years old, and I met Lee Asher when he was 11 years old. And,
cool.
and these guys grow up and they become great magicians. And also some great magicians were very kind to me, so I'm just paying back. So it's kind of a two-edged thing to want to give in that way, because a lot were very kind and very generous to me, and I've seen that pay off in spades when these guys grow up and become really great magicians, and you just feel, glad that you gave them a little time.
Yeah, that's, a little bit goes a long way, right? Goes a long way. Yeah. And I'll say from a personal standpoint, I had the very huge honor of working with Michael on a TV show that we did together here in Las Vegas. And man, just
Angel on the Spike 10 hours of Spike TV.
Yeah, man.
I gotta say, man, that guy has one of the best work ethics of anybody I've ever seen. He was still doing a show there at the Luxor, and working out 10 hours of magic for Spike TV. And this is what was amazing, and you'll remember this. He had already done 7 seasons of The Mind Freak, and now we had to come up with 10 hours of stuff that didn't involve anything that he'd done in 7 seasons of previous performing. And boy, you'd suggest these things, and they, oh yeah, season 3. I remembered one thing. I said, oh, what about this? What if a girl does this, and you give her like an instant, just pulls her shirt out, and now she's got breasts. You give her an instant boob job. Oh yeah, season 3. Well, they've done everything.
It was a lot of fun. It was stressful at times, as any
Yeah.
TV project is.
Deadline, an hour, filming an hour of great magic every week for 10 weeks. Yeah. Yeah. That was no small thing. And
Yeah.
Jesse, it's a pleasure to work with Jesse. And oh, yeah.
Stu Stone was there.
Oh,
Jesse
Stu
Feinberg.
Stone, what a nice guy he was.
Yep. Yep. We had some good
And
times.
Joe, came in
Yep.
and did some stuff.
Joe
So
Devlin. Yeah, an
yeah,
amazing mind and another just great figure in the magic world. And that's why, more than anything, Michael, I'm sincerely grateful for your time this evening because as someone that's been inspired directly from you as a magician and to all of us, what you do, we respect it, we appreciate it, and I am who I am today as a magician, and a big part of that does come from you. And I know a lot of people would say that.
so
So
kind. You're so kind.
you're
And
definitely keeping the torch more than alive.
I thank you for thinking of me and let me be part of this thing. And anytime you want to do anything else, I'll be here for you.
Well, thank you, sir. And before we get out of here, one last question. I have to ask this because someone asked this earlier. Is there some new stuff from you that we might be looking out for sometime down the road?
Yeah, I putting out my linking ring routine for the first time. It should be sometime next month. Through TCC, the company in China that produces just like the finest props you've ever seen. It'll come in a nice leather bag, these beautiful rings, and we're going to put it on Kickstarter next month, just so we have some idea how many sets of rings to produce, because we're just not sure what the marketplace is out there. So, yeah, it's my linking ring routine, and very often when I perform for laymen, that's their favorite thing in the show, and it's all original stuff, all original moves. Again, because I wanted to show the professor that I wasn't going to do just the Symphony of the Rings the way he did it. So everything is different in it, from the show of the rings to the switch of the rings and everything. Yeah.
Very cool. And this one too. This is one of your more recent things. As we get out of here, this is exquisite. You and Low Standard teamed up.
Oh yeah, so nice.
Yeah, the floating glass. Yeah.
What a nice boy. Well, Sandra makes that thing look like real magic.
Two greats right
What
there.
a nice moment. You get to lift the scarf and see it underneath, and then it floats into their hand. Very nice.
Beautiful piece of magic. So that's definitely one of your more recent things. I wanted to drop that in here too because it's a beautiful piece of magic, and you really can't do that with any glass. You just grab a glass with a stem there, and off you go. So,
Yeah.
and speaking of off we go, it is now time for me to say my goodbyes to you and everyone else. We're going to get out of here together. We made it through the storm, Mr. Ammar. We made it through the thunderstorm over there. So,
Very nice. Only one little minor glitch there with the thing, but
not too shabby.
who knows what that came from.
Well,
Hey, look, it's been a pleasure, my friend.
this has been great for me and for everyone else. Me more because I just think you're awesome. But thank you so much for hanging out and chatting with us. To you and your family, stay safe, and we will hopefully see you sooner than later, my friend, out there in the magic world somewhere. So,
Let's do it again someday.
and the rest of you guys, stay safe, take care of yourself and each other. I will catch you next time, and if you haven't yet, make sure you say live in the comments. So every time we do go live, you will be the first to know. See you guys.
Ray.